Do you want your podcast to sound crystal clear, like the pros? It's not just the microphone, it's your audio settings that makes a massive difference. In this video, I'll break down the best recording settings for podcasts, whether you're a beginner or a seasoned podcaster. You'll learn how to set up your gain, sample rate, bit depth, and file formats the right way. First up, gain. Gain is simply how loud your microphone input is before it hits your recording software. Here's the golden rule. Set your levels so your voice peaks between -12 dB to -6 dB. Why? Because this leaves enough headroom to avoid distortion if you get louder while speaking. If your waveform is constantly maxing out or hitting 0 dB, that's clipping. You don't want that. For beginners, use your interface or recorder's gain knob and do a few test recordings. For pros, remember, always gain stage properly to keep your audio clean and dynamic. Next up, sample rate. The standard for podcast recording in 2025 is 48 kilowatts sample rate. Simple, period. Why? Because most video cameras also record audio at 48 kilohertz. So if you're recording a video podcast, your audio and video will sync perfectly in the post-production. No drift, no mismatch over long recording. It just lines up seamlessly. Recording at 48 kilohertz is the sweet spot. It gives you a great clarity and ensures that when you combine your podcast audio with video or even with sound effects and music, it all stays locked together in sync. Now let's talk about bit depth. Bit depth affects how much dynamic range your recording has, the difference between the quietest and the loudest. 16-bit is okay, but 24-bit is what I would recommend. At 24-bit, you get more headroom and less chances of unwanted noises or distortion, especially when you process or enhance your audio later on in the post-production. So, beginners, if 16-bit is your only option, it works, but monitor your levels closely. Pros and serious creators, 24-bit 48 kilowatts is the ideal recording format. Let's talk about file formats. When recording, always use WAV format, WAV. WAV is uncompressed and keeps all your audio details intact, giving you maximum flexibility in the editing, just like shooting a raw photo or video. For publishing though, export your final podcast episodes as MP3 at 128 kilobits per second or 192 kilobits per second in mono. Now here's why mono instead of stereo. Most podcast content is voice, and voice doesn't need to be stereo. It just needs to sound centered and clear. Mono also reduces your file sizes and ensures that listeners on one earbud, in the car, or even on a smart speakers hear everything equally, without sound being lopsided. But what about music tracks and ads in the podcast? If you're adding music beds or ads, you can still mix them in stereo within your editing session. But for the final export, voice should stay in mono to maintain the clarity, and any stereo music will still fold down fine for spoken word dominant formats. Now, onto the loudness. You want your final podcast to hit the level around -16 LUFS, loudness units full scale. That's a podcast loudness standard for stereo or mono content, ensuring your episode isn't too soft or ear-piercingly loud compared to the other podcasts. To hit -16 LUFS, you can use built-in loudness meters in your DAWs like Audition, Logic Pro, or even free tools like Yulin loudness meter. After your EQ, compression, and leveling, apply a limiter at the end to catch peaks to help you hit that sweet spot of -16 LUFS. Alright, here's a quick recap of the best settings for podcast recordings in 2025. Gain, peak between -12 dB to -6 dB. Sample rate, 48 kilowatts, no questions asked. Bit depth, highly recommended to be 24-bit. File format, record in WAV, export in MP3 at 128 or 192 kilobits per second in mono. Final loudness, target -16 LUFS for consistent playback. Set these right and your podcast audio will instantly level up, even before any fancy plugin or post-processing. And that's it. Those are your core audio settings every podcaster should know. If you want me to cover post-processing tips, loudness workflows, or even a full recording to publishing checklist, drop a comment below. If this helped, hit the subscribe button and share it with your fellow podcasters. Until next time, Shazan Salim Jodi signing out. Happy podcasting.